Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Gerlach and I'm the chairman of AML3D Limited and will be chairing the meeting today. Thank you for joining AML3D's first annual general meeting. Given the significant health concerns attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to guidelines and restrictions issued by Australian states and federal governments, we are holding this annual general meeting as a virtual meeting in a manner that is consistent with the temporary modifications to the Corporations Act 2001 introduced by the Commonwealth Treasurer. It is now 10 a.m. and as a quorum is present, I declare the meeting open and I confirm that the meeting has been properly constituted. In opening the 2020 AGM, I would firstly like to introduce the board of AML3D. My fellow directors are in attendance and also appear on your screen. Andrew Sales, Managing Director, Sean Ebert, Executive Director, Len Piro, Non-Executive Director, Kevin Reid, Non-Executive Director and Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. We are also joined by our Company Secretary, Christine Manuel, and also present is Matthew King, representing our Auditor, William Buck. No apologies have been received for today's meeting. We are all excited to be with you today after what has and continues to be a busy and rewarding period for AML3D, with our initial public offering, or IPO, in April, many commercial milestones achieved, and a strong balance sheet. We are in great shape to continue growing in 2021 and beyond. Before we review the year that was, a brief run through of the agenda for this morning. It goes without saying that 2020 has been a year like no other. Today's virtual AGM is another example of how we have all had to adapt and respond to the challenges presented by the global COVID-19 pandemic. Apart from the virtual nature of the AGM, our approach will be as per normal AGMs. I'll begin with a brief overview of AML3D's and our achievements to date. Our Managing Director, Andrew Sales, will then provide an overview of operations and an outlook for the 2021 financial review, after which we will proceed to the formal business and the resolutions to be considered at today's AGM. Today's meeting is being held online via the Lumi platform. We welcome shareholders, proxies and guests who are attending the meeting virtually. All attendees can watch a live webcast of the meeting. In addition, shareholders and proxies have the ability to ask questions and submit votes. A record of today's proceedings will be made available on AML3D's website. Questions from shareholders can be submitted at any time during today's meeting. To ask a question, press on the speech bubble icon. This will open a new screen. At the bottom of that screen, there is a section for you to type your question. Once you have finished typing, please press the arrow symbol to send. It is helpful if you indicate at the beginning of your question the number of the agenda item to which your question relates. Please note that whilst you can submit questions from now onwards, I will not, excuse me, I will not address them until the relevant time in the meeting. Also note that your questions may be moderated, or if there are multiple questions on one topic, amalgamated together. During the formal business of the meeting, I will invite questions and comments in relation to each item of business, and as far as possible, questions will be dealt with during the relevant item. If time permits, I will provide a further opportunity at the end of the meeting, before I close the poll, to respond to any remaining questions. Otherwise, we will answer these in due course by email. I have arranged for the Company Secretary to read out any shareholder questions during the course of business at today's meeting, and will hand over to her at the appropriate time. Proxies have been received from 82 members, representing 37.8% of the company's voting shares. The proxy votes will be displayed on the screen for members' information before discussion of each resolution and before putting the resolution to a vote. Voting today will be conducted by way of a poll on all items of business. In order to provide you with enough time to vote, I will shortly open voting for all resolutions. At that time, if you are eligible to vote at this meeting, a new polling icon will appear. Selecting this icon will bring up a list of resolutions and present you with voting options. To cast your vote, simply select one of the options. There is no need to press a submit or enter button, as the vote is automatically recorded. You do, however, have the ability to change your vote up until the time I declare voting closed. So I now declare voting open on all items of business. The polling icon will soon appear. Please submit your votes at any time. I will provide ample notice prior to the closing of voting. Shareholders are reminded that your board strongly recommends that you vote for all of the resolutions. And I appoint Mr. Nigel Bulling of Computershare Investor Services to be returning officer and to conduct the poll. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a quick recap of AML3D. Our performance, excuse me, our performance in financial year 2020 and our outlook for financial year 2021. Our goal at AML3D is to become a leading diversified, large-scale metal fabrication company by commercialising our proprietary WAM technology. WAM stands for Wire Additive Manufacturing, a process which builds objects via sequential layers of metal. The process combines welding science, robotics, metallurgy, and software to produce automated wire-fed 3D printing in a large freeform environment. I will leave it to Andy to talk to our WAM technology in more detail. However, we consider ourselves to be a disruptor of traditional subtractive metal fabrication, and we strongly believe our technology will transform the metal manufacturing and fabrication landscape forever. We are already delivering products to clients and have a strong pipeline of opportunities that we will be looking to convert into long-term customer contracts. With over 50 discussions held with potential clients, we already have more than 12 customer contracts signed, which is an excellent conversion rate. With the recent $7 million placement, We have ensured that we have the strong balance sheet needed for our short to medium term expansion plans. With no current debt on the books, we are well on the way to revenue generation and growth. Furthermore, the market size is estimated at US $10 billion and growing to US $35 billion by 2024. With our reputation growing in the market and our customer pipeline building, we are taking on new key personnel that will help to drive this pipeline and secure a large part of this massive and exponentially growing market. The AML3D business model. In this next slide, I thought it would be a good idea to talk briefly through the business model for AML3D. There are 4 key revenue streams that will be generated from our business model. They are contract manufacturing, Agm unit sales, licensing, service and maintenance optimization, and consumables supply. We anticipate that contract manufacturing will be the largest revenue segment for the business. Contract manufacturing will be made up of fee-for-service manufacturing for customers, with Singapore to be the first target market. Design optimization services for WAM additive manufacturing and customised production of specialised parts. An example of this is a recently produced ship propeller for 3D PC, a Japanese company. Agm sales will be the sale of the Agm printing module itself to external third parties, with units already sold to 2 customers. Agm is the trade name of the manufacturing unit we sell. From these Agm unit sales, we will be generating annual service fees for training, software updates, and the provision of AML3D staff, as well as ongoing maintenance of the machines to ensure continual improvement is applied to the welding technology. And finally, consumable supply, which is where we will provide high quality feedstock that is specific for use in the Agm units. We have made strong progress since listing. In financial year 2020, a key highlight for AML3D was our successful listing on the ASX. The listing raised $9 million, and we were delighted with the strong support received from both institutional and retail shareholders. We have some high quality institutional investors on our register, which is a great endorsement for our strategy and outlook. Since listing, the team has kept busy delivering progress against our stated objectives. We successfully established footprints here and overseas. Our Singapore office and manufacturing centre is progressing well, and we relocated our local operations to the key industry precinct of Edinburgh in Adelaide. We made senior management appointments to oversee growth here and abroad, and we continue to grow our sales team in a disciplined manner. We have also had great success in converting customer discussions to engagements for component testing. We have no less than 12 customers currently in various stages of testing, and we expect some will lead to long-term recurring manufacturing revenue streams. A review of financial year 2020 would not be complete without touching on the COVID-19 pandemic. At AML3D, we are pleased to have navigated the pandemic with relative success, and we remain committed to upholding the highest standards in health, safety and well-being. We have not recorded any cases internally, which was in part due to early and decisive actions taken through enacting broad-ranging procedures and protocols. Such measures included the ability for staff to work from home, regular testing, and strict enforcement of social distancing in the workplace. It is pleasing to say that aside from some inevitable inconveniences caused by COVID-19, it has been busy as usual for AML3D, and we plan on keeping it that way. Our exciting outlook. The new financial year is now underway and shaping up to be another exciting one for AML3D. We are confident of success given the strong foundation in place and key milestones achieved in 2020. My final slide is one that many of you may have seen before. However, it really sums up the opportunity that lies ahead for AML3D. There are not too many markets that are rising with this exponential growth, and we have a very real opportunity to grab a material share of it. To that end, I will reiterate what I believe to be the key drivers that will underpin our future success. These are: the commercialisation of our proprietary WAM technology has commenced. We continue to sign new customers and are receiving very encouraging feedback. The current bolstering of our management and sales and marketing teams to ensure we are able to take advantage of our early momentum and win further clients and market share. Our WAM technology being globally certified. We are the first wire feedstock additive manufacturing facility to receive a Lloyd's Register qualification, as well as being ISO 9001 certified. Our technology is highly disruptive. The advantages I mentioned earlier will soon see us winning significant market share from traditional fabrication, in my opinion. We are well capitalised for growth thanks to our successful IPO and subsequent share placement. This financial strength will help us move towards a self-sustaining operating model, whereby we will service short-term growth through our growing revenue stream. And lastly, we have an enormous market opportunity to pursue, with expectations of a market size greater than US $35 billion by 2024. It is indeed an exciting platform for AML3D to continue its growth trajectory. Some acknowledgements before I hand over to Andy for his address. I would like to thank my fellow board members for the wide-ranging skills and expertise they have brought to AML3D and their support throughout our initial public offering process. Recognition must also be given to our management team and staff who have demonstrated resilience and dedication during the challenges of COVID-19. Thank you for not wavering from our overarching goal to become a leading diversified large-scale metal fabrication company in the Southern Hemisphere. And finally, to you, our shareholders, thank you for choosing to invest in AML3D. Your board and management team are committed to pursuing profitable and sustainable growth for the benefit of all stakeholders as we build upon the foundation created from our initial public offering in April and operational successes since. Thank you. And on that note, I'll hand over to Andrew Sales, who will talk through operations and outlook in more detail.
Thank you, Stephen, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. AML3D's first AGM as a listed company is a very special occasion for me. It has been and continues to be an exciting journey, and many people have put in a huge effort along the way. So firstly, I'd like to pass on a sincere thank you to all who have helped the company get to where it is today. Before reviewing the year that was, I'd like to reiterate Stephen's comment regarding the exciting outlook for AML3D. There aren't too many companies that can say they're disrupting a traditional and large industry with emerging technology, but that is exactly what AML3D is doing. Let me begin by providing a brief overview of WAM technology and why we expect it to disrupt the traditional metal fabrication industry. Wire additive manufacturing, or WAM, builds objects by sequential layering of metal delivered by our proprietary and bespoke 3D printing software, WAMsoft. Wire feedstock is melted through a plasma arc, but then transferred via controlled molten metal droplets, which solidified to form accurate beads layer by layer to produce high specification metal components. AML3D's WAM technology allows us to make bespoke componentry for customers which are stronger than traditional cast or forged parts. Our process is a cheaper, faster, and much more environmentally friendly when compared to the current metal manufacturing and fabrication processes. As Stephen mentioned, our WAM technology has been globally certified under the Lloyd's Register qualification, as well as having ISO 9001 certification. These certifications are in effect a license to operate and help attract new customers. To receive these certifications, our technology has passed the most stringent of tests. So the way I see it, the certifications are a trigger for the initial interest of new customers and the quality of our product, which is what will bring a long-term relationship with those customers. The wire additive manufacturing process is undertaken by our proprietary Alchemy modules. As a side note, when people see our Alchemy module for the first time, they are surprised by its small footprint compared with the traditional large-scale forging and casting factories. It's no wonder our Alchemy modules are seen as an industry disruptor. It's these modules that we plan to distribute globally to capture a small but significant share of the global additive manufacturing market that Stephen referred to. Traditional fabrication processes require significant infrastructure footprint, high levels of raw material and energy inputs, and are much, much more time and labour intensive than our WAM technology. Traditional methods of cast, forged and billet machining have served the industry very well for hundreds of years, particularly since the beginning of the second industrial revolution. However, today, society is rightfully demanding businesses operate with sustainably smaller environmental footprints. To put some numbers to this, our WAM technology delivers finished, ready-to-use products which are anywhere between 10 to 30% stronger, 70% cheaper and 75% faster to manufacture, as well as being more environmentally friendly with 80% less waste produced. It is for all these reasons that I believe our WAM technology and Alchemy modules will ultimately be viewed as a driver of the fourth industrial revolution. AML3D is uniquely positioned as a leader in this fast-growing sector, which underpins our confidence in an exciting future for AML3D. Turning now to operational progress since listing and promises that we've delivered on. Firstly, revenue generation has commenced across all sectors, listed to the right-hand side of this slide, through building our customer pipeline. A great deal of work has gone into identifying customers for our pipeline and then converting this pipeline into new customers. Once we move beyond component prototyping and testing and into contract manufacturing, we see a great deal of upside for AML3D, especially when you consider the potential market size. This growth in our customer pipeline has seen us make strong inroads into our target industries. In aerospace and defence sector, we've moved into the first stage product testing with Lightforce Australia to develop next generation made-to-fit titanium body armour. With BAE Systems, we're currently evaluating a number of technology options that have the potential to offer new contracting revenue stream, which is a great opportunity. The aerospace and defence sector has grown rapidly and requires strong and precise parts to be manufactured in quick time. I believe we will see strong growth in this sector in years to come. In the marine sector, we manufactured and delivered a 1.4 tonne Panama chock to a major shipbuilder based in Singapore. The chock was subsequently independently assessed by DNVGL and deemed to be 1.5 times stronger than the cast equivalent, a really great outcome indeed. Earlier in the year, we delivered our first Alchemy module to SD Engineering in Singapore under a rent-to-buy arrangement. AML3D retained the right to 50% of the unit's printing capacity, so we'll be able to manufacture products for other customers in Singapore. It's a really flexible working relationship such as this that allow us to leverage our capability while coexisting with customers in a cost-effective manner. We also forged a partnership with Austal Limited to co-develop component parts for maritime defence application, and I'm pleased to say that this relationship continues to strengthen. In the marine sector, we also have purchase orders from 3DPC in Japan to performance test a number of components, with the first being a propeller that was recently completed for them. On the general manufacturing front, we sold an Alchemy module to Roland's Metalworks, a South Australian defence supplier. This domestic sale provided critical local validation and will support our efforts to penetrate the Australian manufacturing sector. We also have been engaged by a European national looking at the manufacture of critical wear components, and we have a new component testing arrangement with a rail company in Europe. We're confident we'll be able to foster these early stage relationships and turn them into long-term contract manufacturing arrangements. And finally, mining, oil and gas sector, we're in the late stages of discussions with various companies to produce component parts. We've also forged a relationship with Additive now that will see us work with their clients to performance test a number of components. The relationship with Additive now is another great example of how we're thinking outside the box, to work with sector-specific companies in mutually beneficial ways. These are just some of the highlights on the progress today. As you can see, it has been a busy start to the new financial year, and I can only see it getting busier from here. In the next slide, when people ask where I see the biggest opportunity for AML3D, I have to say it's having Alchemy modules strategically located through our planned bureau networks, both in Australia and overseas, near our customers and target industries to ensure we deliver products in a timely, cost-effective and environmentally efficient manner. This slide shows some of the target markets and timeframes I believe are achievable once we have the right sized team in place to sign new customers. The beauty of our Alchemy module is that its small footprint means we can manufacture them here in Adelaide and cost effectively transport them anywhere in the world to be positioned near key clients and industries. Benefits of our technology are clear, but the potential growth from establishing ourselves in strategic locations here and internationally cannot be underestimated. I'll finish by reiterating AML3D's value proposition and touching on key catalysts for the current financial year, which is really shaping up as another exciting one. We've covered our key value drivers and they're summarised again on this slide. Firstly, our technology is disrupting a large and growing industry which is in desperate need of change. Our technology is proven and we've commenced the commercialisation process. We're engaged with a number of customers for production testing with potential to deliver significant contract and manufacturing revenues. Footprint of our manufacturing facilities is small but scalable. This is a key advantage to the global rollout of Alchemy modules. Having successfully listed on the ASX in April and completed a subsequent capital raising, we're well funded to deliver our growth program. And lastly, the market opportunity for our WAM technology is huge. The market size is currently estimated at $10 billion, forecast to grow to $36 billion by 2024. I trust you will agree that these value drivers provide a solid foundation for material and sustainable growth in earnings and shareholder returns. I won't list out the many near-term customer catalysts, except to say as we look into FY21, we'll be focused on growing our manufacturing capabilities in Singapore. This is in line with the model that we have successfully delivered in Adelaide, pursuing global business opportunities, focusing initially on creating customer and industry partnerships in high-margin industries, expanding our contract manufacturing base to drive long-term repeat customers, building Alchemy modules for customers looking to establish in-house 3D printing capability, growing recurring revenue via annual software licensing, servicing and maintenance agreements, and the sale of wire feedstock. And lastly, continuing research and development activities to refine and broaden our range of products, such as the application of new alloys and exotic metals using the WAM process. We're expanding our team in a disciplined manner, and will only employ technical sales and marketing support, knowing a financial return can be generated. Maintaining a lean company with an ongoing focus on cost control and shareholder returns is absolutely paramount. Activities this year and our broader growth strategy position us well to sensibly grow our presence in the global market. I believe our proprietary software, our WAM process and equipment will not only entice new customers to work with us, but also help retain customers over the longer term due to WAM's compelling offering. In closing, I'd like to make mention of our very capable team that works tirelessly to ensure AML3D continues on its path to success. I would also like to note the encouraging support I receive from our shareholder base. This reflects a great level of trust placed in us, and for that I'm very grateful. Your support, along with that of our experienced board, has allowed AML3D to evolve into what it is today. You have our commitment that we will continue pursuing our strategic objectives to deliver sustainable and long-term value creation for the benefit of all stakeholders. I look forward to providing regular updates during FY21. And on that note, I'd like to hand back to Stephen to commence the formal part of the AGM. And thank you once again.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I now turn to the formal business of the meeting. The notice of meeting, including an explanatory memorandum, was made available to all shareholders from the 23rd of October 2020, and I propose to take it as read. A copy is available on the AML3D website. This is the first annual general meeting of the company, as I have said previously. The notice of meeting provides details of the motions to be put to this meeting, and I will give shareholders the opportunity to ask questions and comments on each motion. A reminder that if you are eligible to vote at this meeting, please select the voting icon to bring up a list of resolutions and present you with voting options. To cast your vote, simply select one of the options. There is no need to press a submit or enter button, as the vote is automatically recorded. You can change your vote at any time until the time I declare voting closed. The first item of business is to receive, consider and discuss the company's financial statements and the report of directors and auditor of the company for the year ended 30th of June 2020. A copy of the 2020 annual report is available on the AML3D website. We are not required to formally adopt these documents by way of a resolution by shareholders. However, I would be pleased to take comments or questions from shareholders on this item. There is also an opportunity for shareholders to ask questions about the business, including any matters dealt with in Managing Director Andrew Sale's presentation or my address earlier. AML's auditor, Mr. Matthew King of William Buck, is present and is also available to answer questions where appropriate. If a shareholder wishes to ask a question or to make a comment, please use the speech bubble icon, which will open a new screen. At the bottom of that screen, there is a section for you to type your question or comment. Once you have finished typing, please press the arrow symbol to send. As I am unable to accept questions and comments which are not relevant to this discussion, if a question is raised or a comment is made on a point not connected with the financial statements or the matters dealt with in the addresses or other items of business, I will have the Managing Director or his senior managers attend to the matter after the meeting as appropriate. I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. And I ask the Company Secretary, Christine Manuel, to read out any questions which we may have received.
Chairman, the first question is regarding feedstock supply, the strategy for it. Who is the company engaging with AML to supply this metal stock? And going forward, what is the strategy to retain revenue rather than the owners of the Agm machines getting wire stock from elsewhere?
Well, I might hand that over to Andy, but this is a general comment. The feedstock for the process is readily available. So we have not, and we don't anticipate having any problems being able to obtain the relevant feedstock that we need. But Andy, you might have a more technically orientated answer to that question in terms of its availability.
Yeah, I guess the main comment on that is under our quality management system, we have approved suppliers that we've taken the time to audit and bring on board. That's through testing and validating that wire feedstock. So that's quite imperative and ties in with our accreditation to the Lloyd's Register certification, facility certification. So it's part of our process. Feedstock suppliers normally go through quite a checklist before we validate that they're a suitable supplier. So that leads on into our alchemy, and when we sell our alchemy, to endorse the use of the alchemy and the accreditation of the alchemy, then the supplier needs to buy through our quality management system and our approved supplier chain. So that endorses and sort of locks in revenue going forward when we sell our alchemy units.
Well, thank you. Christine, is there another question?
Chairman, there is another question. It's been directed at the Managing Director, but you may, through you, of course. How do you see AML and its customers addressing the barriers in certification in the aerospace market?
Well, yeah, short answer, but Andy, you might also care to make a comment.
Yeah, the aerospace market is a key one. That's something that we've been looking at for some time, but we're mainly led by the need in marine, general manufacturing, and the oil and gas sectors. Our next certification process that we're looking at over the next 1 to 2 years would be focused on supplying the aerospace industry. But we need to keep in mind that that's quite a long-term validation process. And given the current outlook for the aerospace industry, it's probably not something that we're focused on in the short term, definitely something that we're focused on in the long term. And we'll pick up on that as that industry generates more growth. But right now, and for the near-term future, we're focused on the markets that we consider and the industries that we consider that are hot. And that's those aforementioned industries that I've just mentioned.
Okay, Christine, any other questions?
Chairman, no more questions at this point.
Okay, I'll just make a broad comment, and that is that the whole question of defence, aviation, aerospace are obviously really significant areas of future business for the company. So we will definitely be keeping our eyes open and looking for opportunities in that as and when opens itself up. All right, thank you. The notice of meeting also invited shareholders to submit questions to the auditor if the questions are relevant to the conduct of the audit, the preparation and content of the auditor's report, the accounting policies adopted by the company in relation to the preparation of the financial statements, and the independence of the auditor in relation to the conduct of the audit. I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any written questions in relation to those matters that we have received for the auditor.
Chairman, one question has been received for the auditor, but it relates to a separate agenda item. So in consultation with the auditor, it's proposed that it be raised later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
No other questions at this point, Chairman.
All right, well, thank you very much. And we will now move on with the ordinary business of the meeting. Item 2 relates to the election of directors. The first 4 resolutions, items 2A to 2D, relate to election of directors. The non-executive directors of AML3D were appointed by the board in 2019, prior to the company's conversion to a public company, and in the period leading to IPO and initial ASX listing earlier this year. The details of all directors were disclosed in detail in the IPO prospectus, and in accordance with Rule 14.4 of the company's constitution, each non-executive director is standing as a candidate for election at this first annual general meeting of AML3D. As the first resolution relates to my election, I will hand over to Managing Director Andrew Sales to chair this particular item.
Thank you, Stephen. Resolution 2A is the election of Mr. Stephen Gerlach, AM, as the Director of the company. Stephen Gerlach was appointed as Independent Non-Executive Chairman of AML3D on the 30th of August 2019. A summary of Stephen's extensive experience and background was provided in the notice of meeting. As indicated in the notice of meeting, the board, with Stephen Gerlach abstaining, recommends that shareholders vote in favour of Stephen's election. I now move that Mr. Stephen Gerlach be elected as Director. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions we have received. Christine.
Chair, there are no questions at this point from this item.
Thank you, Christine. I will now put the motion to a vote as an ordinary resolution. You are invited to lodge your vote for Resolution 2A by using the polling icon. To cast your vote, simply select one of the options. There is no need to press a submit or enter button as the vote is automatically recorded. You do, however, have the ability to change your vote up until the time the chairman declares the voting closed. I will now hand back to Stephen Gerlach to resume chairing of the meeting.
Thank you, Andy. Resolution 2B is the election of Mr. Sean Ebert as a Director of the company. Sean Ebert was appointed on the 30th of August 2019. Sean's biographical details were provided in the notice of meeting. As indicated in the notice of meeting, the board, with Sean Ebert abstaining, recommends that shareholders vote in favour of Sean's election. I now move that Mr. Sean Ebert be elected as a Director. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? And again, I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. And I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions we have received.
Chairman, no questions received on this item.
Thank you. All right, well then I will now put the motion to a vote as an ordinary resolution. You are invited to lodge your vote for Resolution 2B by using the polling icon. To cast your vote, simply select one of the options. Resolution 2C is the election of Len Piro as a Director. Len Piro was appointed on the 30th of August 2019 as a Director. A summary of Len's background and experience was provided in the notice of meeting. As indicated in the notice of meeting, the board, with Len Piro abstaining, recommends that shareholders vote in favour of Len's election. And I now move that Mr. Leonard Piro be elected as a Director. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. And I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions we have received.
Chairman, no questions on this item.
Thank you, Christine. I will now put the motion to a vote as an ordinary resolution. You are invited to lodge your vote for Resolution 2C by using the polling icon. And Resolution 2D, the election of Mr. Kevin Reid as a director of the company. Kevin Reid was appointed to be a director on the 3rd of December 2019, and he is the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee. Kevin's biographical details were provided in the notice of meeting. As indicated in the notice of meeting, the board, with Kevin Reid abstaining, recommends that shareholders vote in favour of Kevin's election. I now move that Mr. Kevin Reid be elected as a director. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. And I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions we have received.
Chairman, no questions on this item.
Thank you. Well, I will now put the motion to a vote as an ordinary resolution. You are invited to lodge your vote for Resolution 2D by using the polling icon. We can move on to item 3, the adoption of the Remuneration Report. A resolution for adoption of the Remuneration Report is required to be considered and voted on in accordance with Section 250R of the Corporations Act. The Remuneration Report is set out in the 2020 Annual Report. It details in full the company's remuneration framework and the remuneration outcomes in the 2019-2020 financial year for key management personnel, including directors and senior executives. The shareholder vote on the Remuneration Report is advisory only and does not bind the directors or the company in accordance with the Corporations Act. However, the board will take the outcome of the vote into consideration when reviewing the remuneration practices and policies of the company. The board recommends that shareholders vote in favour of adopting the Remuneration Report. Voting exclusions apply for this resolution, and these were outlined in the notice of meeting. I now move that the Remuneration Report for the year ended 30th of June 2020 be adopted. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions we have received.
Chairman, a question was received prior to the meeting from Mr. Jack O'Day of Aido Proprietary Limited as follows. It was addressed to the auditor. Why are incentives given to employees who should be doing all they can for the company based on their current commercial income? In the current climate, things need to change to protect the shareholder owners of the business.
Well, I will ask the company's auditor, Mr. Matthew King of William Buck, to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. William Buck's role as auditor is to provide an opinion on the financial report as a whole and the type and quantum of remuneration granted to employees is not something that the auditor provides an opinion on. So on that basis, I will direct the question to the chairman.
Thank you. I've caught that. Let me just make a few comments. The principle behind the question is a fair question, or reflects a fair question, because it is correct to say that extra benefits should not, in the ordinary course of events, be payable to an employee of the company for basically coming to work. I mean, I think that's an accepted proposition, and we don't have a different view of that. That is not to say, however, that where exceptional performance is produced by one or more of our executive team or employees, that it isn't appropriate, that it is appropriate to give consideration to either short-term or long-term extra benefits. It's the same principle that applies to encouraging employees to have interest in the company. However, I can say that, and it's reflected in the Remuneration Report and it's reflected in the Notice of Meeting, that as at today, or as at this time, there are no short-term or long-term benefits payable to any employee of the company, and that includes the Managing Director. There were options granted to directors and others involved prior to the IPO listing, reflecting contributions that have been made prior to that date, but no options have been listed, have been put in place since that time, and it is unlikely that we would issue options to any of our employees without the approval of our shareholders. So I think the answer to your question shortly is that there is nothing in place. In principle, we're not disagreeing with what you have suggested in your question, but there is room in the running of any well-run corporation that is successful to be able to incentivise relevant employees, including the Managing Director and other executives. And there is also sometimes a reason why it is in the interest of the company to have employees owning shares in the company. But none of that is on our agenda at the moment. We're only 6 months into our existence as a listed company, and we're still getting ourselves onto our feet and establishing solid foundations for the business, and that's where our major interest is at this time. Christine, any other question?
Chairman, there aren't any other questions on this item.
All right, thank you. Well, then I will now put the motion to a vote as an ordinary resolution. You are invited to lodge your vote for Resolution 3 by using the polling icon. If I can then move on to item 4, the ratification of prior issues of shares. On the 12th of October 2020, the company issued 15,555,557 fully paid ordinary shares as a private placement at 45 cents per share to raise approximately $7 million in accordance with the company's placement capacity under ASX Listing Rule 7.1. This resolution seeks the approval of shareholders to ratify the issue of these shares under ASX Listing Rule 7.1 and for the purpose of ASX Listing Rule 7.4. The proceeds from the issue of the placement, as you are aware were for use towards the purchase and commissioning of additional production modules to increase the company's production capacity at its Adelaide facility to satisfy anticipated upcoming demand. These funds also enable the company to increase its headcount in lines with the demands of the business to provide a strong basis for the company to scale significantly. The remaining proceeds were allocated to pursuing large contracts which have medium to long lead times. The effective ratification of this share issue will be to refresh the company's 15% placement capacity under ASX Listing Rule 7.1. The board recommends that shareholders vote in favour of ratifying this issue of shares. Voting exclusions apply for this resolution, and these were outlined in the notice of meeting. I now move resolution 4 as shown on the screen. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. And I ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions received. Christine?
Chairman, no questions received on this item.
Thank you. I will now put the motion to a vote as an ordinary resolution. Please lodge your vote for resolution 4 by using the polling icon and selecting one of the options. Special business. I now move to the special business of the meeting. Item 5 relates to the appointment of the auditor. William Buck was appointed by the board to act as auditor of the company. In accordance with the Corporations Act, William Buck holds this office as auditor until the company's first annual general meeting. The purpose of this resolution is to seek shareholder approval of the ongoing appointment of William Buck as the company's auditor. The notice of meeting included a copy of the written notice nominating William Buck as the company's auditor. William Buck has provided to the company a written consent to act as auditor of AML3D Limited. Mr. Matthew King of William Buck is present today and available to answer any questions. The board recommends that shareholders vote in favour of the appointment of William Buck as auditor of the company. And I now move resolution 5 as shown on the screen. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. And I ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions received.
Chairman, we've not received any questions on this item.
Thank you. I will now put the motion to a vote as a special resolution. Please lodge your vote for resolution 5 by using the polling icon and selecting one of the options. And so the final item is item 6, approval of a 10% placement capacity. Broadly speaking, ASX Listing Rule 7.1 limits the amount of equity securities that a listed company can issue without the approval of its shareholders over any 12-month period to 15% of the fully paid ordinary securities it had on issue at the start of that period. Under ASX listing rule, a company can seek approval from its shareholders to increase this 50% limit by an extra 10% to a total of 25%. And I should say that those companies only are only companies that are not within the ASX listed 300 top companies. is obviously an incentive for newly started companies to actually have a bit more capacity to raise capital. The company wishes to retain as much flexibility as possible to be able to issue equity securities for cash consideration in the coming 12 months if required. This may be for funds for working capital, capital expenditure, acquisition or capital management activities deemed by the board to be in the best interests of the company. Further explanatory information on this resolution was included in the notice of meeting. The board recommends that shareholders vote in favour of approving the 10% placement capacity. And I now move resolution 6 as shown on the screen. Details of the valid proxy votes received in respect of this resolution are now shown on the screen. Does any shareholder wish to make a comment or ask a question on the proposed resolution? I will now pause for a moment to allow for any questions to be submitted. I will now ask the Company Secretary to read out any questions we've received. Christine.
Chairman, no questions for this item.
Thank you. I will now put the motion to a vote as a special resolution. Please lodge your vote for resolution 6 by using the polling icon and selecting one of the options. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes all of the resolutions to be voted. Shortly, I will close the voting system. Please ensure that you have cast your vote on all 8 resolutions. I remind you that you have the ability to change your vote until the time that I declare the voting closed. Shareholders are reminded that your board recommends that you vote for all the resolutions. While you are finalising your votes, I will call for any final questions or comments on any item of business. Christine, have we got any further questions?
Chairman, yes, there is a further question, which is, how easy is it for a competitor to blatantly copy or reverse engineer or duplicate the AML process? What is the financial moat?
Well, I'll let Andy make a comment on that as well, but as is reflected in the annual report of the company, the fact is that the company owns a large number of patents in relation to the technology which is used by the company. That affords the maximum type of protection that legally can be obtained. Market forces have an influence, of course. Andy, you may care to make a comment on that as well, because even our own technology is continually being updated and developed further, and it goes without saying that there are other people looking at doing, if not the same thing, something similar, or wanting to copy or whatever.
Yeah, I guess the short answer is that it's not as easy as one would think. I guess while hardware is available, the key aspect to our technology is the tie-up with the WAMsoft and the software capability. Not only that, but it's also the number of short years recently spent on building up the database of material capability. It's not easy for anyone to replicate. It would take a number of years to do so. And the expertise globally at the moment is not readily available. On top of that, when we sell an Alchemy system, and in fact, with our setup for Singapore, with our bureau in the near term, and sending our production cell Alchemy units up there, they're all encrypted. So it's all controllable by a very small core, knowledgeable team back here in Adelaide. So we've got as much protection as we can. And again, I'd just like to reiterate, it's something that's not easy. It does look simple, but there's a lot of work that have gone in over the years, over recent years, to develop this.
Thanks, Andy. And I just emphasise the, apart from the other aspects of it all, the absolute importance of the integrity of the software. So that is a matter that the board discusses with Andy, and the necessity for us to make sure that we have the available skills to enable us to keep further developing that software, because it is one of our major advantages that we need to protect as much as we possibly can. Christine, any other questions?
Chairman, no further questions, and I can also advise that nearly all the votes have now been submitted by shareholders attending.
Well, I'll just pause for a minute, just in case there's some still coming in, before I close the votes. So in those circumstances, I declare the poll closed and formally charge Mr. Nigel Bulling of Computershare as returning officer to count the votes. After the votes have been counted, the results of today's poll will be released to ASX and displayed on the company's website. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business of this annual general meeting, and I now declare the meeting closed and hope that you have found the format for this meeting and the circumstances relatively easy to follow, and have contributed to you having a successful meeting with us. So thank you for your attendance and for your support for AML3D Limited. Forward to our next meeting.